Chapter 20. Off to Dame Slap's School. Joe flew the aeroplane very well indeed. As soon as he was high enough, he pressed the straight-on handle, and the shining aeroplane flew forward. The children leaned over the side to see what they were flying over. They had soon passed the land of Take What You Want, and came to a queer desolate country where no trees or grass grew, and not a house was to be seen. "That's the country of loneliness," said Moonface, peering over. "Don't land there, Joe. Fly on." Joe flew on. Once he came to an enormous hill, and he had to press the handle marked up, or the aeroplane would have flown straight into it. It was really great fun. Joe had had no idea that it was so easy to fly. The little white goat on Bessie's knee was as good as gold. It licked Bessie's cheek every now and then, just as if it were a dog. The hens were good and quiet, and the clock lay perfectly still. The aeroplane flew over a land of great towers and castles. "Giant land," said Silky, looking in wonder at the enormous buildings. "I hope we don't land there." "Rather not," said Joe, and he pressed the straight-on handle down still further, so that the aeroplane flew forward like a bird, faster and faster. The children's hair streamed backwards, and as for Silky's mop of golden hair, it looked like a buttercup blown in the wind. Over the land of Lollipop they went, and over the country of Flop, and then the aeroplane began to make a funny noise. "Hello," said Joe, "what's wrong?" "I believe the aeroplane's tired," said Moonface. "It sounds like it's out of breath." "Don't be silly, Moonface," said Joe. "Aeroplanes don't get out of breath." "This kind does," said Moonface. "Can't you hear it panting?" It certainly seemed as if the aeroplane was panting. It went, sounding a lot like Grandma. "Had we better go down and give it a rest?" said Joe. "Yes," said Moonface, peering over the side. "It seems safe enough. I don't know what this land is, but it looks quite ordinary. There's a big green house down below with an enormous garden. Perhaps we could land on the long smooth lawn, Joe. We shouldn't get bumped then." "Right," said Joe, and pressed the handle marked down, and down they went, gliding smoothly. Bump! They reached the grass and ran along the aeroplane's big wheels. It stopped, and everyone got out, glad to stretch their legs. 10 minutes' rest, and the aeroplane will be ready to go off again," said Moonface, patting it. "I wonder where we are," said Silky, looking round. Moonface gazed at the big green house in the distance, and then he frowned. "Oh my," he groaned, "I know whose house that is. It's a school, and it belongs to old Dame Slap. All the wicked pixies and gnomes and fairies are sent there to learn to be better. Let's hope Dame Slap doesn't catch sight of us." Everyone looked about nervously. Suddenly, down a path came a tall old woman, with large glasses on her long nose and a big white bonnet on her head. Moonface ran to the aeroplane. "Quick," he said, "it's Dame Slap." But the old lady was up to them before they could escape. "Ah," she said, "so here is another lot of naughty folk sent to me to cure. Come this way, please." "We haven't been sent to you," said Joe. We landed here to give our aeroplane a rest. We are on our way home." "Naughty boy to tell stories like that," said Dame Slap, and gave poor Joe a sharp smack that made him jump and turn red. "Come with me, all of you." There didn't seem anything else to do. Joe, Bessie, Fanny, Moonface, Silky, the white goat, and the 7 hens all followed Dame Slap, looking very miserable. The clock wouldn't walk, so Silky had to carry it. Everyone felt very hungry. Joe pulled Dame Slap's sleeve timidly. "Could we please have something to eat?" he asked. "Tea will be ready in a few minutes," said Dame Slap. "Heads up, everyone. Don't stoop, little girl." The little girl was poor Fanny, who got a poke between her shoulders to make her stand straight. Really, Dame Slap was not at all a very nice person. It was very bad luck to have landed in her garden. But everybody cheered up a little at the thought of tea. They were taken into a large hall full of pixies and other fairy folk. They were all sitting down in rows at wooden tables, but they stood up when Dame Slap came into the room. "Sit over there," said Dame Slap, pointing to an empty table. The children, Moonface, Silky, the goat, and the hens all took their places. The clock was stood at the end and looked very sulky. The children looked around the tables. Oh, what lovely buns! What gorgeous biscuits! What big jugs of lemonade! Dame Slap ran her eyes over the little folk standing at the tables. She frowned. "Twinkle, come here," she said. A small pixie walked up to her. "Haven't I told you to brush your hair properly for meal times?" said Dame Slap, and she slapped the pixie hard. Twinkle burst into tears. "And there's Doodle over there with a torn tunic," said Dame Slap. "Come here, Doodle." Doodle came and was slapped very hard indeed. Bessie and Fanny felt nervous and hoped that their hair and hands and dresses were clean and tidy. "Sit," said Dame Slap, and everyone sat. "Have a bun," said Joe, and passed Bessie and Fanny a plate of delicious-looking buns with jam in the middle. But what a shock for them! As soon as the buns touched their plate, they turned into hard pieces of stale bread. The children didn't dare say a word. They saw that the same thing happened to everyone in the room except Dame Slap, who made a marvellous tea of buns, biscuits, and pieces of plum cake. The lemonade turned into water as soon as it was poured into the glasses. It was dreadfully disappointing. In the middle of the meal a gnome servant came to say that someone wanted to speak to Dame Slap, and she went out of the room. And then, dear me, the children found that the little folk in the room were deliberately very bad indeed. They crowded round them and poked them and pinched them and made such rude remarks that Fanny began to cry. They made such a noise that nobody heard Dame Slap come back again. My goodness, wasn't she angry? She clapped her hands together and made everyone jump nearly out of their skin. "What's all this?" she shouted, in a very fierce voice. "Form up in a line! March past me at once!" To the children's dismay, everyone got a good hard slap as they passed the cross old lady. But when they passed her, she did not slap them, for she knew that they had been teased by the others, so they were very glad indeed, and felt a little more cheerful. "Go to the schoolroom," said Dame Slap, when the last of the line had gone by. So to the schoolroom they all went and took their places, even the little green-winged hens. "Now please answer the questions written on the blackboard," said Dame Slap. "You have each got a paper and pencil. Anyone putting down the wrong answers will be very sorry indeed." Joe looked at the questions on the board. He read them out to the others in great astonishment. "If you take away 3 caterpillars from one bush, how many gooseberries will there be left? Add a pint of milk to the peck of peas and say what will be left over. If a train runs at 6 miles an hour and has to pass under 4 tunnels, put down what the guard's mother is likely to have for dinner on Sundays." Everybody gazed at the board in despair. Whatever did the questions mean? They seemed to be nonsense. "I can't do any," said Moonface in a loud voice, and he threw down his pencils. "It's all silly nonsense," said Joe, and he threw down his pencil too. The girls did the same, and Silky tore her paper in half. All the pixie and fairy folk stared at them in the greatest astonishment and horror. "Indeed," said Dame Slap, suddenly looking twice as big as usual, "if that's how you feel, come with me." Nobody wanted to go with her, but they found that they had to, for their legs walked them after Dame Slap without being made so. It was most extraordinary. Dame Slap led them to a small room and pushed them in. Then she shut the door with a slam and turned the key in the lock. You will stay there for 3 hours, and then I will come and see if you are sorry," she said. "This is awful," said Joe gloomily. "She's no right to keep us here. We don't belong to her silly school. We haven't been naughty. It was just an accident that we came here." "Well, what are we to do now?" said Silky, pushing back her golden hair. "It seems as if we'll have to stay here for 3 hours, and then say we're sorry and be slapped. I don't like it at all." Nobody liked it. They all sat on the floor and looked angry and miserable. If only they could escape from Dame Slap's silly old school.